guys. So I was looking in this old book here, and this is a pretty cool book. I just want to talk about a few things in here, and I'll do some reading. So here's the inside of it by Jeannie Hall. Jenny? Huh. No, I thought it was Jeannie, so I have in the back what she wrote to teachers. This is a textbook. So Rand McNally, she's an instructor, was an instructor in history and English in the Francis W. Parker School in Chicago. So for the four old Greeks, Achilles, Dionysos, Heracles, and Alcestis. So let's see if I can go. I have to go all the way to the end here, and I'm going to read what she says in here. So it's a kid's book, goes pretty fast. Let's rotate that. Okay. Suggestions to teachers, and it's kind of strange and creepy. Now we'll go back, but this book is written in 1929, a textbook for kids. Suggestions to teachers. I wish to speak first of these stories as stories only. I hope that for children who read them, they will set up ideals of action, that they will help to begin an analysis of character, that they will furnish a happy time and images pleasant to recall. In order that these things may be accomplished, the characters must be vivid. Frequent, free discussion wherein the children make and express their own judgments without much interference from grown people, without guidance, will help toward this and will, besides, begin the habit of character analysis. Well, you know, it sounds good, but better even than this discussion for bringing about a clear knowledge of people is dramatization. So I'll talk a little bit about that later. If a boy has once played that he is Hercules, he has established a secret understanding and sympathy with Heracles that only a close personal acquaintanceship could create. So that's kind of creepy, you know. If a boy has once played that he is Heracles, he has established a secret understanding and sympathy with Heracles that only a close personal acquaintanceship could create. Let me say a word in favor of giving the correct setting to these stories. It is quite possible to read and to understand them while putting the people into modern surroundings, but it seems to me that we shall gain something by the other course. We are, children and grown people, liable to the fault of thinking that our way of doing a thing is the only way. A knowledge that there is another way is the first step toward generosity and toleration. Besides power to understand situations not present to the senses and to construct mental material into new pictures is a valuable acquisition. So I'll read that one again. Besides power to understand situations not present to the senses and to construct mental material into new pictures is a valuable acquisition. It requires much labor to build up the correct images. But the children's delight in the novelty of seeing these new things and the teacher's own pleasure in the beauty of Greeks moving in their proper environment will richly repay all effort. Pictures and models will be needed constantly. Pictures are the more beautiful and the more easy to get and to use. But they, oh, this is cool. Show this real quick. Yeah, why don't we get these things in books anymore? Oh, how to pronounce it. Oh, pretty cool, huh? Alright, so Alright, she continues, they're often inadequate. For instance, they cannot tell about a house. Only a model can do that properly. It can be made with a movable roof, so that all the rooms and courts can be seen at once. Again, if a boy be dressed in cardboard armor, covered with silver paper, with a spear in his hand and a shield on his arm and a sword at his side, he will know more about armor and warriors than a whole art gallery could tell him. For the understanding of dress, pretty, inexpensive, and fairly truthful costumes can be made of cotton crepe or of cotton cashmere. They give the feeling, the folds, and the color better than pictures can do. Well, not anymore. But there are dangers in using models. They are imperfect. The size is wrong, or the material is wrong, or the color is wrong. Well, replicate things. Teach kids the actual facts and details. So even in 1929, look at how deep the programming already was here. The children need constantly to be reminded of this until a perfect image has been firmly established by the combined aid of models and description. So this is teaching a child how to build up an idol in the child's mind. The child fills in the details itself. The child is not building up or learning about the truth of anything. And the child is learning to worship its own imagination, its own self, its ego. This is back in 1929. So now I never read this book until just recently. I've just had it sitting around. So I couldn't tell you if this was here back on Sagittarius, but it's really odd. For temples and statues, pictures and casts are the only things. What? Why? What? Let the schoolroom be rich with them. Sorry. Where it is possible, use art galleries frequently. I have seen artistic tastes grow in children during the years living with these objects of art. If, too, the pupils themselves produce under the inspiration of these fine things, they will gain an artistic skill. Paint, chalk, and clay, and plaster seem to me the only materials that are sufficiently flexible for the children to construct with profitably. That's what it says. Construct with profitably in this connection. Alright, so this is where it gets into the myths, the Greek myths. This is an indoctrination book from 1929. Many other stories, quite as well as the Greek, will serve as character studies and will furnish novel setting. But surely no other people with stories sufficiently simple had at that time such a wealth of beauty to illuminate them. It is this richness of artistic connection that makes Greek stories especially valuable for little children. Why should we wait until we are nearly grown before we know Greek art? Blah, 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 blah. Alright. Rotate. Companionship that breed in us love of beautiful things. So let the men of these stories introduce readers to the beauties of Greek art. Alright, well, it's kind of... Okay, we'll go back here. And we'll look at this one. The Merry Dionysos. We'll go a little bit. I'm going to look just a little bit at this one with Hercules. I'm not going to read all of this. Okay, so here is the table of contents. If anybody wants me to read any of this, I sure would. Alright. Oh, so, okay. Alright, let's rotate this. Alright. Now this is how it describes Olympos, where the so-called gods live. Now I will say, as you go through this entire book, and I read the whole thing, it doesn't call them gods. It doesn't use the little g or the big G. It doesn't call them gods, alright? So this is the description of Olympos. There was a beautiful place in the sky called Olympos. It was higher than any man could see. It was a wonderful meadow with hills all around it. Okay, this is written for kids, obviously. The place was never shaken by winds. It was never wet by rain. The snow never fell upon it. A cloud was never in the air. Clear, warm light always shone upon it. There lived the happy people. They were taller than men. They knew all things. They could make things come to pass as they pleased. They could stand on the hills and look all over the world with their great eyes. So, you know, a lot of this sounds like some kind of like biosphere, or, you know, controlled environment. And here, this technology, they knew all things, and they could look all over the world with their great eyes. They feasted in gold and silver palaces. They walked among the stars and watched the battles at Troy. So there's a description later on. I'm not going to read this. Sorry. They always describe their characters more like people. Like they have moods, and they get angry, and they could be spiteful, or they could be good, or they could do nice things, and they could be helpful. But like us, like a people, different kind of people. So notice the happy people, capitalized, that's what they called them. Right? Many of them went down sometimes and helped in the war. So, you know, I'm not going to read all of this, but Apollo, it describes in this, further on in this book, how he, during the siege of Troy, how he got pissed off and just decided to sit there and watch for something like 10 days, you know. So they didn't, and they weren't treated as gods. They weren't talked about in these, and this is in the early books of the four old Greeks, not treated as gods. So I'm not going to read all of this, but there's just a few things I wanted to point out on some of these pages. Okay, so here, this is during Achilles and the war, the Trojan War. Let's see. So here, they wanted to get Apollo to help them. The things I want to point out are the sacrifice and kind of the evolution of the sacrifice and worship throughout this book. Alright, so this is more how it starts out. Apollo has helped them out a bit, you know, after he got done sulking. So they say, well, let us build a house for him. He can come there to rest when he pleases. We can put meat and fruits there. We must have someone to take care of the house and to burn the meat and the fruit, for the smoke will go up to Apollo in the sky. It will make him strong and glad, and he will say, oh, my people love me. So moving on, there's another one further on of the what will become the temple and the sacrifices, right? And how it started out, just, you know, where this dude, you know, he has powers and he has technology, I think, and it helped them out. And so they're like, well, you know, we'll make him a house, and he can come down there and he can stay there, and we'll keep it stocked with food, and we'll get someone to take care of it for him. That person later would become a priest. right? So, and then here's a description, more I think technology description. Um, sorry guys, I got a cough again, like goes away and comes back, but this is a description of Athena coming down. They covered their faces with their hands. All at once they heard a great clap of thunder. They uncovered their faces and looked at the mountain. The yellow fire was blazing high in front of the dark pine trees of the forest. The people looked into the sky. They saw a silver cloud dropping quickly through the air. Lightning shot from it. It dropped upon Hercules. Then it opened for a minute, and the people saw Athena in a chariot of gold with 4 white horses. She held out her hand to Heracles, and he stood up and stepped into the chariot. Then Athena turned the horses, and the cloud shut and quickly flew up into the sky again. The people stood still. At first they could not speak for wonder, right? So that's when they gods have been paying attention to Heracles. He's a son of Zeus and a mortal woman. He's done all these deeds, and they decided to take him up to live in Olympus, right? Zeus loves him. He's gone to live with Zeus. All right? So then they ran and told everybody. Did you see the great yellow fire and the silver cloud? Yes, Heracles' friends answered. It was for Heracles. He's gone to Olympus. Right? He can rest now. Right? So he didn't die or anything. They're not spirit gods taking him into a spirit world. Right? So talks about Zeus. Zeus greets him there. Right? It describes in Olympus. They walked into the great room. There sat a long table with shining gold and silver dishes on it, piles of fruit. Great carved chairs were by the table. Beautiful people stood by them. They were the wonderful people of Olympus. They were very tall. Their robes were soft and long. Their skin was white. Their hair was like gold. So they're people, but they're different kind of people. Alright, so, yeah, a little more there. So, Heracles lived in Olympus. He could look all over the world and see men. So, we can do that with satellites. We can do that with Wi-Fi. We don't need to have cameras everywhere. You know, we have them in orbit. So again, assuming the round Earth model, that flat Earth model really puts makes a lot of problems. Anyway, Heracles, he loved them now as much as he used to, and he still wished to help them. He saw many people sick, right? So he wanted to help them, and he went back down. Alright, Heracles. I'll say him okay. Okay, so they make an altar to Heracles. Here's the altar. Wonder why I didn't get the previous page. I did, okay. Alright. Oh, okay. I didn't want to skip that. What can I do for them? For the sick people. For the sick people. Then he made springs of warm water flow from the ground. Sick people came to these springs and bathed in them and were well. Then they said, Heracles has done this because he loves us. Let us thank him. So they built a marble altar there. They poured wine upon it and raised their hands to the sky, saying, "O Heracles, we thank you," because they knew that he could see them, right? He's probably like watching the springs a lot, or monitoring, or other people are monitoring them. You know, they're trying to help them with this water. Okay, in Olympos, okay, they raised their hands up to the sky. You know, they're just like they know he could see them from up there, like they would probably have cameras or whatever. Heracles heard their prayer and smelled the wine and was glad because he had made these people happy. All right, the people left the altar and a man to take care of it, just to make sure, like, it doesn't get vandalized and destroyed. And you know, there may have been a microphone, a camera there. When they went away, they told others who were sick about this wonderful spring. So every year, many people came there and bathed in the water, right, and prayed at the altar. Like, so they're telling, it's a way to tell the people that are dwelling in this controlled environment, or maybe it's like a mothership. It doesn't sound like, it says Olympos, you know, that's another other thing. It's not described like a mountain's harsh conditions, you know. So that's not what was described there. Alright, so then it talks about the games. Alright, but the Olympic Games, here it goes on. I didn't take pictures of that, even though people might be interested, but it was kind of long. So I want to go into the book about Dionysos here, the Greek. There's a story where they find grapes, and Dionysos discovers grapes and likes grapes, and he's got these nymphs around him, these like, you know, they're not human, but they're human-like women, you know, females. And then he's got the satyrs, and they have goat's legs, you know. So they find grapes. So then after that, Dionysos studied the vine more and more. He learned how to start new plants, how to make the grapes grow larger. He found that if he picked them and put them in the sun, they would become very sweet and would keep all through the winter. These raisins and the grapes he and his friends ate at their feasts. So he wasn't a god. He didn't know this beforehand. You know, he had to figure this out, how to make raisins, right? And he liked it. He really liked it, raisins and grapes. He remembered the sweet juice that he squeezed from the grapes on the first day. That would make a good drink. All right? So now we're going to get into why I think in the Bible it's changed from wineskins to bottles. So this is a really important story to the occultists. And in this story, there's a clear distinction between considering Dionysos as just another being, a people, one of the happy people, you know. You'll see how he morphs in this story to being something that gets worshipped, and how we get a lot of the things that we even have now today with this worship of Dionysos. And of course we know how the mystery cults and that were in Rome were also basically the same thing. Dionysos, they're worshippers. You know, they practice pedophilia and these different things. So anyway, this really shows the morphing of, you know, what is closer to what actually probably happened to what we're seeing here, you know, with these tales and worship. So this is really good how this part of the book, how it, from beginning to end, how it morphs into something more evil, right? So the thing with the grapes and all of that, and how he figured it out, and how he's going to teach people how to use them and stuff. But the bottles is important in here. So he built a sort of press and squeezed the grapes in it. He caught the juice in a skin bottle. When he tasted it, he smiled to himself and went to find the nymphs, carrying the full bottle. "Come taste my wine," he called. So the nymphs ran up to him and tasted the wine, and clapped their hands and tasted again. Surely Zeus in Olympus never drank so sweet a drink. Well, if he's a god, he would know he would know everything about it, right? "Dionysos, you shall be our winemaker and always have wine ready for our feasts." At one of these banquets, Dionysos said, "The raisins would be cleaner if they did not lie on the floor." So the people are pretty dumb at this point. Okay. "Oh, it's all right," said the lazy satyrs. But the next night, when all the people came to supper, there was a low table. The fruits were heaped on this. Beside it were couches of leaves. The nymphs and satyrs opened their mouths in wonder. "This is a new way to eat," said Dionysos, as he lay down on the leaves. He did another thing to make the banquets pleasanter. At one of the feasts he said, "This goat skin that we have our wine in is a great nuisance. See how Cora must always tie the mouth together. If she forgets to do that, the wine spills out. A wineskin ought to stand up." A wineskin ought to stand up because Cora is too lazy to tie the mouth. She has to always remember, right? The nymphs and the satyrs are lazy. Okay? So the next day he came to the cave, all covered with dirt. In his hands he was holding very carefully a big lump of clay. But when the nymphs looked at it closely, they saw that it was thin, and that there was a great empty place inside. "What are you going to do with..." Rotate. "What are you going to do with that dirty thing?" they asked, and held their robes away, so they can't work and they don't get dirty. He laughed and told them to wait. He walked to the fire at the mouth of the cave. He set the clay down in the hottest place. Then he sat by it and watched it and turned it. "It is growing red," the nymphs cried. Dionysos only smiled and turned the clay again. The nymphs were soon tired of watching him. "Oh, come and play," they said. "No," answered Dionysos. "I am busy. You run on." And so they did. Late in the afternoon they came back. Dionysos walked toward them carrying the red clay thing. "Drink from my jar," he said. And sure enough, it was full of water. "But the water will be muddy," they cried. "Try it and see," he laughed. "No, it is good and clean," they said in surprise. "Why, the clay is hard." "Yes, indeed," said Dionysos, "and see, it will stand alone and not spill." And he set it on the ground. Then he and the nymphs and the satyrs joined hands and danced around it. And they made up a song somewhat like this: "Dionysos is far wiser than old Selenos." I didn't check the pronunciation guide on that, guys. Oh. Selenos. "He found for us a new kind of berry, wine and raisins he made for us." So he made it for the nymphs and the satyrs. They didn't know how to eat grapes or make raisins either. But this is the best thing of all: a wineskin out of clay that will not roll over and spill. Dionysos, Evoe, whatever. Probably shouldn't say that word. I'm joking. No clue, guys. I don't know. Whoop. Alright, at supper that night, Dionysos was very sober. "What is the matter?" asked his friends, but he only shook his head. At last he said, "Dear friends, I think I must leave you." So here he's going to leave them. He's going to leave the nymphs and the satyrs. So, the nymphs and the satyrs, they're not humans. He did this all for them. Dear friends, I think I must leave you. Leave us. Where are you going? You know how much happier and more comfortable. We are, since I found those grapes. And he took up a bunch of them. Oh yes, Dionysos, have we not thanked you 1,000 times? Yes, you have indeed. I think too that this jar will be a pleasant thing to use. Well, if these things make us happy, I think they will make other people happy too. So, I am going to take a jar of wine and a basket of grapes and slips of the vine all over the world with me. I will plant the vine and teach people to make jars and to make wine. I will teach people to make jars and to make wine. To make jars. But think how we shall miss you, Dionysos, pleaded the nymphs. It will be very lonely without you, said old Selenos. Yes, I know, and I am sad too. Now, Seleno, I think this dude is a person. This is a human here that lived with them. Learning. This guy, this human. Yes, I know, and I am sad too, and when I think of leaving you, but I must go and help others with my jars. So they go with him. Will you? Then I'm happy. All over the world together. So they jumped up and down and went around singing. I don't know. We will show them how to make jars of clay. All over the world together. Oh, we're merry people. Everyone took a jar of wine and a basket of grapes. They are such gay, kind people that the animals of the forest love them. So that kind of reminds me of Cernunnos. That morning, and when they started, leopards and panthers and fawns and wild asses followed them from the wood. Is this in any biblical? Is this leopards and panthers and fawns and wild asses? So we have the Bible change of the bottles. The bottles. He goes around and he goes around and spreads the bottles, and he learns how to make wheat and bread. Right? Taught him how to make raisins and wine press. All the people. Whenever these merry folk found a good man working on his farm, they planted a vine and left a jar. Okay? So I'm not saying that Dionysos and all these nymphs and satyrs went around raping people. Doesn't seem to be any talk about anything like that. Just him and them just going around and teaching people how to do all of this stuff. And the jars. And the jars are important. And it ends up on this planet. It ends up in the Bible. That's what I think. Thanks be, thanks be. So after this, let's see, he leaves. Okay, he is left, and they have this procession. After he leaves, they're going to do this yearly. All right, when they're ready for winter in the fall equinox. Now note the artwork here. And the naked babies and the children. This person, the jar. This person has like a club, and there's this child, you know. There's the instruments and things. So here's the procession. They go down this procession here. The people poured all the fruit from their baskets upon the altar. They killed a goat and put it in there too, because it had nibbled their vines and tried to kill them. Then they set fire to all the pile. The priest, so now the person that before was just keeping upkeep, you know, now he's the priest. Now he's the priest. You know. So there's an evolution of this worship. The priest stood before it and raised his hands in prayer now. It's to Dionysos. O Dionysos, thou, O loving one, giver. Rotate. Sorry, guys. Giver of the vine, bringer of joy, ripener of all mellow fruits, hear us. We thank thee for the dew and the fruits. So he's just left. And they're still thinking, you know, he can hear them in Olympos. We thank thee for gladness. We dance and sing for thee. We burn for thee this goat and these fruits that thou hast given us. I pour out thy wine. May thy smell be sweet to thy nostrils, and our prayers to thy ears. So first we just have like a little, you know, square for Heracles. You know, Apollo has a house he could come and stay in. So things are starting to go sour here. Things are starting to go sour. And it's likely because I think the civilization began to prosper more, and the humans, the elite humans at that time, started to betray us. Other humans started to betray us, other humans, to these other beings, and started practicing these other rites and sacrifices. And I think, you know, I don't know what the part of this being is. You know, that could be more fakery. And you see how it's all of a sudden it's evolved and there's this worship. Then all the people sang again of the goodness of Dionysos. So that's like mind control here starting. They told stories about Dionysos. The boys in false faces played that they were satyrs. Okay. Yeah, okay, so. Oh, this is I went back, and this is the description of him going up, alright? Him leaving. Alright, so after that, he took care of all the grapes and fruits in the world, and people loved him for it. But he wasn't there. So here the lies start to begin. The lies start to begin. Because I believe that, you know, we have the priests and we have people that are getting rich, and they wanted it to stay that way. They wanted it to stay that way. Okay, so here's more. This has a little more on the jars. And I just think that with the jars and the wineskins, this teaching, this teaching, it's important about the bottles. You know, here's more on that. And the altar. Alright. So they all start to dress up. They all start to give up all of the finest of the fruits and things, you know, which probably the rich people probably ended up with, you know. They start with the long sticks and the pine cones, you know, the music and all of that. The priest with the long purple and gold robes now, right? The people were quiet. They're being, you know, instructed to be silent. And all marched around the altar many times. So see how elaborate this gets, how elaborate this is. So I think that's this picture here. Oops, sorry. I'm just going to show you that. Okay, alright. Okay. Here's a description of their, like, celebration, you know. We're the jolly friends of Dionysos. They start to pretend. They start to do plays and things. Sometimes a young man would play that he was Dionysos. Other people would be pirates. Right? This is some king's son. We should get a great ransom. So they start to kidnapping people. Pretending, giving people ideas. They've got the pine cone starts to become really prominent. I don't know why I keep doing that. Okay. point. So at the next year, there was somebody that looked like Dionysos. He wore rich robes like Dionysos and carried a staff like Dionysos. He wore a mask so that his face looked like Dionysos' face. So there's the mask. Starts with the mask. He had blocks under his feet so that he was tall like Dionysos. He stood on a little mound of earth so that all the people could see him. He said something like this: "My cradle was a corner of the sky. Zeus is my father. Mount Nysa was my home." So that's not, in the early part, that's not how they talk about Zeus. Not how they talk about Heracles, Zeus's son. Not how they talk about Apollo. And they don't have a lot in this early part with the happy people. So there's no talk. There's still been no like reference to Dionysos even as a god. So this comes later, and even on Sagittarius it came later. But I think really the main thing I wanted to show you was how this story evolved, how the wineskins and the satyrs, or I'm sorry, I was looking at how the wineskins and the bottles come in, how the bottles are important to this cult of Dionysos, because Dionysos traveled all around the world, and he wanted to give everyone bottles, teach them to get drunk and be lazy, apparently, So the result didn't seem to have been very good here. The result wasn't that great. But it's the people, it's what the people did after he left. How it went really sour. They started to act in plays and I might have missed it. And the men, would dress like women. That's in here too. Ah, dang it. Okay, yeah, okay. So, okay, another man, the poet. At the time of the festival, the poet and his men came. So I know we love plays and poetry and all that stuff, but it's even here, even at this time, it started to be used as a form of mind control, and propaganda. Even then. Now this book's 1929, but it's referencing back to older books here from the Greek. So anyway, that's all of it. Let's see, what is that one? Selenos. Okay. All right. Anyway, that's probably quite long. So I love you guys. Have a great day. God bless you. I know yesterday was not really the greatest day with the school shooting, and not the greatest day for me here with the kids and the little girl. I just want to let everybody know the little girl's going to be okay, and she's been taken to a treatment center. So, that's all that really matters right now, is that she pulled through, and I just hope that she can really get somebody that cares about her can help her out. So, well, God bless you, and God bless your kids, if any of you have kids. This world is hard on the kids. It really, really is. So, everybody stay strong, and I'll talk to you again.
I just took a ride on a silver machine, and I'm still feeling mean. Well, do you want to ride and see yourself going by?